Let me know when we're good, Christian. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CocoaHeads for March. It's a big, exciting event tonight, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why in just a second. But thank you for coming, and thank you for being on time. I know it's normally us who are late, so thank you for helping us there. So to begin with, as always, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. A little bit of housekeeping. So again, welcome. I'm Zach, and along with Christian, who's on the camera there, we run CocoaHeads. So welcome and thank you for coming. Of course, a reminder that there's a code of conduct that applies to all the events and also to the online communities like the Slack. You can read it in full on the website, but the idea is to be respectful, be inclusive, and be aware of fellow attendees. And if there's any issues or concerns regarding this, please come and speak to Christian or myself, or send us a message after the fact as well. And now, as always, a massive thank you to our sponsors, because without them, we couldn't do these events. So we have two sponsors for tonight. We have Billu and Procreate. So Billu obviously in their offices, and Procreate help with our ongoing costs as well. So a big thank you to both of them for that. And we have some news from one of our sponsors. So Procreate's Sydney office is now open, and there's a career page link on screen. And when I looked earlier in this week, Procreate were hiring an engineering manager, senior software engineer, and a product designer for their Sydney office. Does that sound right, Claire? Yeah, cool. Yep, so there's those open roles, Procreate. If you're interested, definitely check out that page. And Claire is also here tonight from Procreate, so if you'd like to say hello, she'll be around. And now I mentioned before that we have a Slack community, definitely worth checking out if you're not in the Slack group already. When you join a few channels that might be of interest, the general channel, the jobs channel, and then the Sydney channel, which is usually just me posting about when the next meetup is, but still, I guess, good to know. Sorry, you got it? Sorry, cool. Awesome. So we are on YouTube tonight. The camera's just there pointing mostly at the speaker, but just be aware of that. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Is anyone attending for the first time tonight? Show of hands. Welcome. I've got a few new attendees. Round of applause. Welcome. Thanks for coming, and we hope you enjoy. And of course, if you like what you see here tonight, some other events that might be interesting. We've got the Melbourne CocoaHeads group. They tend to run a week before us. So we run on the third Thursday of the month. They run on the second, and they usually have a live stream as well. Definitely worth checking that out. Sorry? They used to. Oh, sorry. Anyway, they're actively running. Yeah, Melbourne's on the second Thursday of the month. Definitely worth checking that out. And then there's also the Brisbane CocoaHeads meetup, who we're collaborating with tonight. Definitely check them. I think they are now on YouTube as well and doing live streams. So definitely worth checking that out as well. Not yet. Well, they're not live yet, but they will be a bit later tonight. If you're interested in conferences, we've got a dates for the DevWorld conference for this year, coming at the end of August. I know many people in this room like to attend DevWorld. It's a very good conference. If you've ever attended before, you would know that. That's all we have for now. I don't even think the talk submissions are open yet, but definitely keep an eye on that webpage if you're interested in attending or speaking. And you might have already seen, but Apple's turning 50 at the start of next month. And as a result, they're running various events and sessions around the world. I was trying to find something to tie into this event. I couldn't see much for Sydney in terms of events. I know there's some in other parts of Asia, but there is this, which I found interesting. So if you happen to be near the Opera House next week, starting on the 25th of March through to the 27th, the sails of the Opera House will light up with drawings done by people in Procreate. So speaking of our sponsor from earlier, and these are done by emerging Australian artists. So that's really cool to kind of have local artists, local app on the sails of the Opera House. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, if you're in and around the city on those dates, definitely check that out at night, because it's sure to be good. Is anyone hiring or looking for work and want to give a quick plug? Yeah, do you feel free to introduce yourself and what you're looking for? Yeah. Yeah, if you like, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Sylvia. This is my first time come here, and I'm an iOS developer. Come from China, and I relocated to Sydney about 2 years ago. And right now, I'm actually looking for opportunities for iOS developer. Thank you for Zach and Christine organize this meeting up so that I can have the opportunity to meet all you guys and have the chance to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Awesome. Well, if you're hiring or you might be hiring in the future, you know who to talk to in the breaks. Okay, and looking ahead, so we'll be back here at Billu on the 16th of April, and we're still looking for speakers. So if anyone's interested in presenting, please get in touch and we can make that happen. All right, now I mentioned tonight is a jam-packed, very exciting event. So here's what we have on. We're starting with a talk from Christian. Then we'll take a very short break, and we're collaborating with Brisbane tonight. So their meetup is going to start around the time that Christian's talk ends, and we're going to join their live stream just to watch. They've got a couple of talks on from Oliver and Sarah.
I feel like saying it will start around when I end is a bit underselling. It will start when I end.
Yeah. Yep. So no pressure. Then there will be another short break, and we will have Way talk in Sydney, and we'll be streaming that up to Brisbane. So these talks are in celebration of International Women's Day, which is kind of International Women's Month, just celebrating it given that it's our March meetup. And yeah, it's awesome to be able to have so many cool talks on tonight. So we hope you enjoy. Thanks again for coming, and I will pass it straight over to Christian. So, thank you.
Doing tech.
Yeah. You're right.
Okay. Well, you check. I can't check.
Yeah.
So. No pressure. Okay. Well, thanks, Zach. Good evening. I am Christian, also by name, not by religion. That's a weird joke. Never mind. And when I don't run CocoaHeads with Zach, I build apps. So, and tonight I'm going to talk about type-driven design, which is quite a fascinating topic, which I ran into not literally, but like a few years ago. And learning more about that, it helps me write better software. So I wanted to share a few of these design principles and sort of that mindset with you on how we can use Swift's type system to, and the compiler to prevent from shipping bugs. Sounds good to me. A little bit sad we have Procreate in the room tonight because I'm not an artist, so I had help with this one. But tonight we're going to look at a little app that I thought we could call Cocoa Brew, which is the most chocolatey app in the world. Super simple, you know, we can have a menu of cocoa drinks, we can customize them, can have different milk types, temperature, you can have iced chocolate, you can have hot chocolate, and so forth. So it's a code-heavy talk, but we'll jump straight into it. So in order to be able to order a nice drink, first thing we do is, you know, present a menu, and then people can select what drink they want. Then it must be added to an order. We may have an option to apply a promo code, but ultimately we need to pay for it, and we might be calling some sort of external API to do that, or a library. So pretty simple so far. What could go wrong? Well, if we expand some of the potential implementations, what might happen if at the top right, I change some of the validation logic for a promo code? If I remove it, some of the restrictions, can you then somehow be able to put any string there and just get a free discount? What if I pass in down below like a drink ID instead of an order ID? I mean, they're both UUID, so you could mix them up, right? What happens if I, by mistake, remove some of those guard checks? You know, the code will still be valid and build and run, but you might, again, end up shipping an app that just has no validation on promo codes. Or again, down in the pay order function, like what happens if I might mix up the total price with the discount price? Easy mistakes, they can happen. To solve some of these problems, what we usually tend to do is sort of scatter all kinds of validation logic in our code, hoping that it's enough. It's kind of makes an app that's built on hopes and assumptions more than trust and validation. Or rather, you might assume when you build your app, like, okay, this validation or this logic is validated because I've called it and I got it from there, so I don't need to validate things again. Or you might just think, well, the backend was going to do all that, right? So who cares? But we can add more guard statements or validation in our code. We can add tests. We can use linters, like myself, massive fan of SwiftLint. And of course, we've got code review. So we've got measures in place to prevent problems. But while all of these can help, like you can still end up with tests being skipped on your CI, or maybe you don't have a test yet. Linters can be silenced or disabled. Sometimes code review isn't as much a review as it is, looks good to me. Or, and I'm sure we all know this, like we've got a release cut date and we just kind of need to merge this now because otherwise we will miss it. So just, merge, I tested it, all good to go. But in reality, compilation errors are the only guarantee that we have to potentially block a broken app from being released. And so what we want as much as possible is to move that feedback loop down to the compiler level. And in a way, we kind of want to make an app where we can make errors on purpose to know that it works. So what does that mean? So you've all seen this. This is a quick little playground. Like you'll get these sort of compile time errors saying, type string has no member brew. Cannot assign to a let custom. Okay, we know these. Like we've made a mistake and we must fix them. But what we'd really like is for the compiler to tell us all kinds of sort of likely causes in our app, and therefore force us to fix them before we can even ship that app. Something like cannot pay for order with no items. Obvious business rule, but like the compiler doesn't know about that. This string is not a valid promo code. Again, if it's a string, compiler says, yeah, good to me, but it doesn't know. And we can easily sort of slip through mistakes or problems this way. So with the help of the compiler, I have not written my own compiler, don't worry. That's not a talk. That's not that. But let me take you through some improvements that we can make to CocoaBrew. The first kind of problem you may see, and a really common source of bugs, would be something we can group under information loss. So this happens, like we can imagine a scenario where we've got a view, a customer will tap a drink on a menu, we store that value up in the selected drink, menu item state, and then when that's not nil, we present a sheet where they can customize it. Seems straightforward. And if you notice, like in this, in the middle, like in the constant, we do check or present the sheet when the selected drink is not nil, i.e. it has a value. But then what happens is now we create a customized view, but we still pass that selected drink to that. And at that time, it's still an optional, even though we've just sort of checked it has a value. And so what we end up with is that customized view has now lost that information we've just validated, because again, that might have an optional menu item, and again we have to guard and unwrap that drink once again. So the fix in this case could be to use the sheet item modifier, which in SwiftUI acts like a parser. It will take that sort of optional value, transform it into, or unwrap it into a guaranteed menu item when we're in that closure. And that means that this customized view can now take a non-optional, and sort of there is no non-optional type anymore, and that there's no information now lost because we've unwrapped it. So we're going to look at a different example. So imagine that, as I said, we can have this order ID. But in our code base currently, it's just a string that we pass around, and that can be fine, right? And let's say we've got some business requirement saying that, well, an order ID must have 6 characters, and the first 2 must be letters, because, yes. So what happens a lot is that, again, we have to guard that. We have to validate this in our code and on the backend, of course. But we have to validate it everywhere. Or at least we should, at least, because if we validate, we validate it in one function, but when we pass it to the next function, it has no clue that, well, it's been checked up there, or like maybe it changed, like who knows. And you can bring back this sort of order service, and as I mentioned, that might be in a third-party library or some backend code. And again, it has no context or knowledge if that order ID we've now passed in has already been validated somewhere else. Like, we kind of have to assume the worst and then, again, validate everywhere, which is fine, a little bit duplicated. So, I love magic moves. It's it's good. To improve and fix this, we might say, okay, well, first of all, why do we have order IDs just as a string? Like, let's use UIDs. And that would completely eliminate all this, which is true. But we'll see later that even that carries some flaws. So there's a guy named Edwin Brady who came up with the concept of, like, he wrote a book when he wrote his Idris programming language, which is very sort of type based. And he came up with this concept of, like, we want to create types that represent domain rules. Then we want to define the implementations of those types, and then we want to refine them regularly. And what he said is, types aren't just containers. They're basically evidence. We can use them to preserve information and contain this sort of proof that something has been validated. And if we want to apply this to our app, so let's have a look at some of the code before and sort of try to think, how can we create types that represent the pieces of data we have and those business requirements? So we start at number 1. We might have requirements saying, like, user is using an app as a guest, so we can see a menu. Okay, so we probably need some sort of user type to represent that. And we could say, okay, we need to support guest users, so maybe that user sometimes is nil if there isn't one logged in. Makes sense. Number 2 could be, the user can select a drink from the menu. Okay, so we probably need some sort of drink type to represent that. And then, some of the business rules around that could be, well, you can only pick it if we actually have the ingredients in stock, or maybe a drink can have a certain age limit. Yeah, you figure that out. Number 3, user adds a drink to an order. Okay, so we'll need some sort of order type to contain that. And this is where we can get a little bit sort of do an easy step already. Like, you'll notice that instead of UUID now, we can create a little type alias to represent or sort of clearly document this is an order ID. So it sort of removes ambiguity when you see that compared to other IDs. And we'll have some function, of course, to accompany that. Number 4, user may select some toppings. We'll need a type for that. 5, user can add a promo code for discount. So we'll need some sort of promo code type and functions, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's the sort of thinking you need to do, like, what kind of things do I have in my app or program, and how do I what kind of business rules do I have? And this is what we had before. So we were using strings, UUIDs, decimals, et cetera, in our functions. But now we've got these new types, even though they're empty now, like we've not implemented anything yet, we can go ahead and change our functions to use these new types. So you'll see drink, user, order. We have a money type, payment method type, those kind of things. But again, imagine that on the lower right, like, this order service is still a library. It's not really code we can touch, so we still need to use more foundation types there. But that's a good point, because we can create types as we sort of know about them and as they develop. Like this is not like an all or nothing exercise. You can refine, right? But at least for the Swift developers in the house, now we get all kinds of build errors. What did we do wrong? You might not believe me when I said I was not a designer, because this looks pretty good. But anyway, no, kind of nothing. We did nothing wrong. We did exactly what we wanted, because we are now not providing the required information. So the compiler will tell us that. And also, I can't convert value of type string to be a drink. What are you doing? Or value of type order has no member exists. Like, I don't know what that is. So we're already getting quite far. Of course, in order to make the project build now, we've got to expand our new types to add some of those fields that we do need. So again, for example, drink will have an ID, name, price, etc. Order will have an ID again, and an array of items. And promo code will have, well, it's still just a string, but at least we've sort of wrapped it now in its own type. So when we can't just pass string around anymore, it has to be that type. So we've gotten a good way. And then, of course, we modify our code to, we modify our code to use the new values from our types, and the errors will go away. Yeah. Next up, so parsing and validation is something we need to talk about when we look at our implementation. So we've kind of solved one problem now, where we've ensured that we have to use the correct type to pass around our functions. But if you remember all that duplication from before, where we're validating order ID in multiple places, we've not really solved that one yet, because similarly to before, like now we're doing a lot of validation down in apply promo code, but in the onApply tapped function, like should we also validate the input there before we pass it down to that function? What happens when we call the function on the order service? Like, should that also do validation? Like, it's the same problem as before, but at least it can only happen in a promo code context, I guess. So the rule and goal here is really that we want a way to put validation into a structured and trustable type. And that's where we can get to define the implementation of the requirements that we have. So again, yeah, how do we improve that? Okay, so common first step, and definitely better, would be to, okay, well, we've got some duplication. Let's extract that into a variable or property or helper function, whatever you prefer, right? So we can put that out in the promo code type itself, and then have like an isValid property. So we have one central price to decide, when is that code valid. So better than before, no duplication, but we still is caught by that information loss problem, because now we just have to check that property everywhere and either, return or show an error or something if it's not valid. So we're not really better off. We just have less code. And ultimately, we still don't have a type that we can trust. So the real solution here is to pass, not validate. And Swift has a wonderful feature called failable initializers, which means that you can, again, with promo code, like we can try to initialize it with some raw string, and then we have all our validation logic. But if it's not a valid string, we will just fail creating it and return nil. So we've basically made a promise, you could say, to not allow this type to even exist in our code if it's not created with a valid value. So it's still a string, but now it does have that promise that if you pass it around, it's guaranteed to be valid because it could not exist without that. And so parsing, as opposed to validation, it really does preserve that information and those requirements in the type. And so that's kind of where we want to get to. Like, we'll have a hard failure if we can create that type. And obviously need to address that and handle that. But now the compiler will help us to not make that mistake. And then we get to refine types. So we're starting with that one type. We get more information, we're getting new requirements. We can start to create new types and refine the ones that we have as our program sort of evolves. And again, if you remember, like this order service, let's say it was in a library, but maybe that's something that we do now have access to touch, and we could go ahead and do something there too, because it's still using decimals and strings. And we do have to like, so in the function in the middle, we've got an order, which is a real type, but we still have to sort of get that string value out to pass it to the order service. But now we can go ahead as well and sort of remove that, or at least move that down to that level. So we've sort of forced to provide the real object. And I mean, ultimately, we at some point have to get to those raw values, because presumably we're going to put it in some sort of JSON and send it over the network. But now we can do it at the latest possible time. And everywhere else we work with trusted types. So we have modified our app to be fairly safe now, except for one thing. If we look at this order or pay order function, particularly this completion block, it returns a Boolean, common to see. And that Boolean is like, is success, and if it is, we can show a receipt, and if it's not, we will show an error. What does success mean? Does that mean that the order is paid and confirmed? Does it mean that the request itself succeeded, but the payment is pending? If it's not a success, what did happen? Like, we have no knowledge of what could have gone wrong when we just deal with Booleans. And in fact, what happens if we, by mistake, happen to rename that to isFailure? Okay, I forgot to update that if function, but you get the point. Now it kind of does the opposite. Like, so if there's an error, now we show the receipt. Like that, no. So we've introduced quite a serious bug, but our program will still run along like it would not care, or compile, that is. So, okay, well, we might also have is success, but then what if we swapped those two values by mistake? Like, yeah, again, if success, show error, else show receipt. Not great. So a Boolean really only contains true or false. I mean, that is what it's for, but it does not contain any context about what either of those mean. And it could be worse. I hope this never happens or has happened, but what if the order service library changed its implementation to now send back true if there is a failure, similar to, like, you know, Unix return code? It will return 0 if it's all good, or something else if it's errors. I don't know. I'm sure this has happened. Who knows? Hopefully there's documentation. But again, like, if this happened in some package that we use, our program would still compile and run. It would not know at all. But we would have a problem. So what do we do? Okay, well, instead of a Boolean, let's try using, why don't we just return the order itself, like if it succeeds, and then if it doesn't, it can be optional, we can return nil to know that there was some sort of error. This is better, although it does pose its own questions. Again, if there is an error, what is it? If payment succeeds, how do we now know that that order preserves that information? Or rather, how can we ensure that we cannot call show receipt with some order that is not paid for. Like, I don't want to have an app that shows receipt for things that's not paid yet. What can we do? Okay, well, one idea could be we have a look at this order type. Okay, so what if we put in some properties that can contain some payment information if it's there, or again, be optional and nil if it's not there yet. And we might have a little convenience, property to check. Okay, is this paid or not? So we can look at that. Nicer, but now we've added more logic and validation, and we're sort of weirdly coupling orders now with payment information, and it doesn't really make sense to me. And it still doesn't solve that problem of information loss, because what happens when we pass this value order into show receipt? Like, now that also has to check, well, was this even paid yet? Then I don't know. So it kind of looks like we might need a separate type to sort of reflect a, call it confirmed order, something that is fully paid, fully processed already. And so we can take those properties, make them non-optional, and sort of move them over to that one. And there's a little bit of a lesson there in that if you find yourself dealing with types that have all kinds of odd, like optional or sort of circumstantial properties, it's probably a good indication that you're dealing with two separate kinds of things there. So probably a good thing to look at that and see, is this really, two or more types really? And be a little bit more clear and sort of type safe in your code there. At the same time, we never want to create a confirmed order directly. So we want it to only ever be created and returned by our order service. And so we can make it decodable. And even more, like if we sort of override what Swift generates, we can add this init from decoder method and block the normal initializer. And now the compiler will block us entirely in our app from creating this type of object, which should only ever be created if we have a confirmed order. We'll get back to that one. At the same time, let's notice this new payment ID property that confirmed order has. So coming back to my point before, like we're using UUIDs, but now we're using them again for two different purposes, and it's easy to mix them up. Like imagine that you sort of by mistake use the order ID when you want to pay for you might mix them up because they're still just UUIDs, like they're type aliases, but they're still just the same type. So what can we do there? It's a concept called phantom types, where we can basically create a new generic ID type which binds to a specific other type. And so now if you were to pass an order ID instead of a payment ID, the compiler will tell you, these are not the same type. I need an ID order entity for this or whatnot. So now we've completely removed any chance of providing a wrong UUID. There might still be that underneath, but we have type protection on top. And so with this in place, we can improve this and return a confirmed order type. And we probably want to handle that error stuff as well. So we wrap it in a result type, and we can contain all this information. And so now this pay order function will only, it will only return a confirmed order type when everything is passed and validated. But of course, now this if statement doesn't really work anymore. So we will, pretty much the only thing we can do sort of is switch on the result and then extract. Oh, that's a proper word for that. Anyway, but get to that sort of underlying value. And it also lets the compiler force us to cover all possible cases. So there is no, oh, we forgot to add the error handling. I mean, I guess you can not show the error, but there is no way of not handling that. Well, except for one thing, because it doesn't really guarantee that we even look at that result at all. What if we just assume that Well, it probably goes fine use most of the time. Just show a receipt, and we can bypass all the rest. So we still have a problem. And what we really want is to require this show receipt function to take a confirmed order argument, which means that also in the view, it must be created with one of these types. So which means that we're now at a point where we can only ever get a confirmed order from a order service after a confirmed payment. And we can only ever show a receipt when we have that information. It is impossible to show a receipt without a confirmed order. So this really creates a strong dependency, and again, compile time guarantee that can prevent problems. And that's also somewhat known as the witness pattern, where the function takes in something that verifies that all the information is in place, which is now built into the type itself. Okay, next, let's talk about default values. Any love for default values? The room is, enraged. Again, not a designer. Please keep sponsoring us. Imagine we've got this checkout view, which takes an array of drinks, and we can add them to a cart, and you can sort of review your cart and pay from there. If that array is empty, how do we display that? Like, do we have some sort of empty state screen? Do we have a default? How do we default value from an empty array? Like, what do we show? Nothing. What about that total price at the bottom? Default to 0? Maybe. Would it be possible to get to this screen and place an order with no drinks, but apply a promo code and get free money? What is, is there a helpful and sort of meaningful default value for this screen if there is no drinks? We have two choices we can look at. So one is to make this screen or view more permissive. Like, we can sort of expand what values it could return, i.e. default values, in case something isn't quite right, I suppose. Or we can go down the road of being more restrictive, i.e. disallow values that could cause invalid states. So let's look at the permissive part. Like, that can absolutely work. So let's say that this view accepts, okay, sometimes this array is empty. Obviously, then we need to then check it. Like, if it's not empty, we can calculate some sort of total price. If it's empty, what do we default to 0? Probably can make sense in that case. But again, now we're bringing back levels of validation, and that button at the bottom, again, should we validate things again there when we send a request to the backend? Should that then validate? Oh, do we actually have any drinks? Like, again, same duplication, same lost information. And what even is a sensible default value? Like, it's, I don't know. Okay, well, we're gonna make it a little bit cleaner. Let's say we could make that total price optional. So we still need to do a little bit of checking to see if it's empty. Now we can return nil, i.e. we're permitting this property to return nil. And now, looking good there. But again, now we've got this sort of text. Or we don't have to unwrap, but in this text, we have maybe a total price, and if not, again, we can default to 0. But again, what is it sensible default? But like 0 dash, not of it, like not a number, not of it, like what? It doesn't really have any meaning, does it? And similarly, what about that list? Like, what do we show nothing if there's no items? It seems not too useful. Do we have some sort of placeholder? Like, what is even the point of trying to design an experience that we never want to exist? Like, at this point, we've got an app that's pretty much lying about what should happen, at least according to the business requirements, right? So maybe this is not really the way to go. Thanks, Claude, for the lovely screenshot. Okay, Well, let's have a look at the restrictive approach. We don't want this screen to exist if we have no drinks. It makes sense. So we might try to implement a new type called non-empty array, which effectively wraps a different, or an array. But again, we bring back this failable initializer that we pass in this raw array of drinks. It may be empty, it may not be. But if it is empty, we say, no, can't create this. This must be non-empty. And so we prevent this from ever existing. And it also means now that if we use or say in the view that drinks must be a non-empty array of drink, we now have a compile time guarantee that it will contain something. It will never be empty. Because at least to me, it makes no sense to have a checkout screen that allows you to pay for something that has nothing in it. So, so with all that done, we can now, we've got this, we're using this new array. We don't need to make that total price optional anymore. We could, because we know there are some items, so we know we can just go ahead and calculate it. We can remove those default values. Like, again, there will be a price, so we can just show it. And now we can also remove all those checks around that list because, again, there will be something, so there's at least one thing we can show. And we also now remove this sort of problem in the button where, again, imagine like we can only create an order with a non-empty array. So now if the checkout function requires that, we can never call checkout with no items. Like it is, I was going to say physically impossible. That's not right. But, and we have removed any need to handle default values. We have no errors to handle. We don't need to come up with all kinds of error screens. You have no items. What do you want to do? It can never happen. Like it can literally never happen. So what you end up with is this sort of like these, I don't know, gates of verification where the only way to proceed forward is to provide the required pieces that you can only get from the step before it. So again, with the example of confirmed order, when you pay for an order, that will create, that's the only thing that can create a confirmed order type. When you need to show the receipt, it requires a confirmed order, which can only come from a paid order, etc., etc. So we end up with this program that's really, really robust because we've removed many, many, many causes of failure. Which brings me to my last point, which is also really important. Remember that we explicitly set or created confirmed order to only be able to be decodable, i.e. created from, like, say, backend or something, because that prevents us from creating it ourselves. Except for one thing, because in our code, we could still do something like that. Like, we could just put in some fake random data in our code base and say, okay, well, go ahead and create that now, and then, you know, show receipt for a non-existent order that's not validated on the backend or something. The point being is that it's not about perfection. Like we don't need to get to a state where mistakes are absolutely impossible. We just want to make it really easy to write safe code and hard enough to write faulty code so that you don't do it, or at least it's pretty easy to pick up in a code review. So where do we start? Okay, if you think about your code base, there's a couple of places to look at. Obviously, try to capture those essential requirements. Figure out how you can pass things instead of validating things. Super easy way that I like to use is start with type aliases, because at the very, very least, it gives you a little bit more intention and sort of documents what is this string or whatever we're wrapping. Even if it's still just a string, it's still just the naming helps understand what are we dealing with here. And then obviously get to create your domain types as, like, again, even if that's just wrapping a string or something, it's actually brings you a lot of the way. Try to figure out if you can use enums instead of Boolean values. And again, make it easy to do the right thing, hard to introduce errors. You've probably heard this saying of like trust then verify. I've switched that to verify then trust. And so this journey is about, it's like, type-driven design is about giving the compiler more context about what your types mean, not just what they contain, which helps us to protect against mistakes, and again, makes that code a lot more intentional and self-documenting. Thank you very much. Of course.
Don't have time for questions, but you can ask them in the break.
100%.
We're going to take a very short 5-minute break. So I think there's a little bit more pizza, drinks in the fridge. The toilets are out in the corridor to your left. But yeah, otherwise we'll see you back here at 7:30 for the next talk. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, that's good.
trying to pencil in the story of an indie developer as well. So he has spun up a few side apps there and is working on it full time. It's enough to sort of look after him financially. He's got a couple of part-time people under him now as well, and looking to bring them on full-time by the end of the year, which is really cool. So that would be awesome to get them in. And then we've got some lightning talks in June, so feel free to reach out on Slack. I'd love to hear from you if you would like to do a talk. The bar's really low. You can do a minute or two talk. You know, you can do a 5-10 minute one. We'll just sort of loosely pencil them in. But yeah, just do a talk on like what you're currently working on, or something you've refactored, or you know, even just a bit of a like fun thing. Just the bar's really low. But I think it would be a good way to sort of bridge like going to do like a longer talk as well. Agenda for the evening, food, networking chats, that is well underway. I'm about to hand over to Oliver, who's going to do a talk on volunteering for She Hacks With. Then we'll pass on to his partner Sarah. She's going to do a talk on International Women's Day action, which is going to be really cool. And then we'll cross over to Wei down in Sydney. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Oliver Jones.
Cheers. I'll stick us on so I don't have to hold it. Okay, we switch. Oh no. Why? Sorry. For some reason my slides got closed. Never mind, okay. Now I got to remember where they were. Oh, there we go. Sorry. It's wrong screen. Sorry. How do you slideshow to the other screen?
It says no frames have dropped. It's getting around 6 to 8 kbps.
Station display options. Sorry about this. Well, is it going to work? Come on, Chrome. No, that's the wrong way around. Jesus. How do you do this?
We got any technical people in the room?
What on earth? Okay, which side am I on here? No, can't. Okay, this is annoying. Now I've lost my mouse pointer. Don't know which way the screen is. There we go, finally. Let me just do, let's try this again. Presenter view, no, that's on the right screen. Now I've got to get this one. Yeah, over there.
Nice.
That'll do. I don't know. I'm not a Chrome user or a Google Slides user normally, so please excuse my ineptitude. Anyway, good day everyone. My name is Oliver Jones. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Obviously the people watching in Sydney or online don't know necessarily who I am, but I'm an Apple Platforms engineer working at Mantle Group. We're a big enterprise consultancy. We do all sorts of things from cloud, data, AI, and digital, which is the area I'm in, doing iOS development. So yeah, full disclosure, doing this in conjunction with my wife, who runs Girl Geek Academy, which is an organization she co-founded and is the CEO of, and she'll be speaking after me. And this talk is about volunteering for a series of events that she did that we did at Girl Geek Academy just recently, just before our child was born, in January. So in January, Girl Geek Academy ran She Hacks Swift hackathons. And we were fortunate enough to hold those hackathons at Apple's offices in Melbourne and Sydney. And Apple also very kindly offered and provided additional equipment for us to use, a whole bunch of MacBooks essentially. And that was a huge help, obviously, because this hackathon targets young women, teenage girls at school, and they don't necessarily have not all of them have parents who can afford to buy them a MacBook or an iPad that's capable of running iOS or, latest Swift Playgrounds or Xcode. So the hackathon, as I said, was targeting teenage girls, so teenage high school students. But some of those attended were as young as 11. That young 11-year-old blew me away. She came with her sister, older sister, and she, from the beginning anyway, appeared to not know a lot, but by the end was presenting like a pro, and that was amazing to see. The event makes no assumptions really around the skill level of the girls who attend. They can have no experience at all to being fairly experienced and maybe having attended previous She Hacks Swift, because Sarah has run these events, these hackathons in the past, previous years. When they come to the event, they're kind of thrown in the deep end. They're not, as I said, they don't necessarily, there's no assumption made about what their skill level is. But after day one, they've started working through tutorials online, like the Swift tutorials that Apple provides. And through the help of mentors and that, they're getting up to speed really quickly. It's quite amazing to see how fast these young people can, figure things out and get on with it. It's a 3-day hackathon. It's structured around the idea of the girls forming teams and forming startups and building startup ideas. They are sort of instructed to figure out how to build an MVP for their idea. They don't have to work in groups, but that's encouraged. We definitely had a lot of girls working in small groups, but the few individuals who I think probably were the more they had more experience with programming, and they were working by themselves, often on projects that already sort of started or had ideas for. But a lot of the girls were brought together and didn't know each other. Maybe some of them were from the same school, but maybe not actually friends with each other at that point. And part of that environment is to really sort of build those friendships and bonds between the girls so that they kind of can form a little team, a little group of Girl Geeks. And one of the principal ideas that Girl Geek Academy is founded on is this idea of you need multiple different skill sets in a group to make a successful product and make a successful team. In Girl Geek Academy, they have this idea of the hipster, the hacker, and the hustler. So the hipster being someone who's the designer or the artist, the hacker obviously being the more technical focused individual, and the hustler being the getting stuff done, kind of organizing sales sort of person in that team. And so what Girl Geek Academy and through the She Hacks Swifts and other events that they run want to foment amongst these girls is the idea that they don't necessarily have to be the best technical person on the team. They can fall into one of those roles and still be valuable to their team. And that gives them, confidence and knowledge that they can, get things done. So as a mentor, I'd actually, although obviously being husband to Sarah, I am aware of the hackathons that they've done in the past. I've never actually mentored at one before. And so this year was the first time that I did that. And as a mentor, your role really is to try and unlock that the students or the participants' ideas and provide, expertise that helps them make progress towards their goals. And I was constantly surprised at how little help the students often needed. Once you unlock them, they would plow ahead and, get on with their ideas. Unblocking them usually just was solving a particular technical problem. Like, I don't know, one group had totally screwed up their Git repo, and they were the only ones using GitHub and Git. So, but they were doing it, and they were sharing their files through pushing code up and up, and they were just committing to main, but it was working for them. And then somehow, I think actually one of the other mentors came and said, "Oh, you should be making a branch," and that totally screwed them up. So. Anyway, so I fixed that for them, and they were away laughing again, and they were just banging away, and they presented an amazing app at the end. It was really surprising, especially considering one of the girls, like half the keys on a keyboard weren't even there. That popped off. Yeah, so one of the key things that I had to constantly check myself on, actually, in helping and being a mentor in this situation, is to not be too helpful, and. As it says on the slide there, you've got to avoid playing the game, right? It's like, you've got a little kid, a little brother or something, or a little sister, and she's trying to, play a video game, and you're like, "Oh, it's just this," and you take the controller off them, and you're like, "Oh, there we go, you've completed the level," when you hand it back, and they're like, "Why'd you do that for?" Because they were having fun, actually, with the challenge. Sometimes the challenges in software development aren't fun, and they're just frustrating, so you're there to try and help get out of those things, but you don't want to hand them the answers, because that's part of the growth and the enjoyment of what they're doing is actually knowing that what they built themselves. But certainly, as an expert in software engineering from an iOS perspective, you can be there to give them guidance on asking the right questions and where to get the information, or maybe look at this GitHub repo that's got that feature already for you, or whatever. Or just steal code out of that Swift tutorial or sample code that's on Xcode's website, on Apple's website. And I found it particularly hard because often the girls' ambitions sort of exceeded the available time. And you want them to be successful and have something at the end. You don't want them to have nothing or half finished or stuff like that. So in those situations, what really they need is guidance on scope reduction or keeping things focused and stuff. But having said that, some of the little teams that formed just built these amazing apps with lots of features. So sometimes you can get a lot done in 3 days if you have got enough enthusiasm and don't mind what the code looks like. Another thing you have to always keep in mind as an engineer, I think, and as a mentor or someone who has a lot of experience when you're dealing with people who are at an inexperienced level, is that you've always got to be plussing. So plussing is the idea of responding with yes and rather than sort of negative or finding the problems in their ideas. And as an experienced engineer, it can be really difficult because engineers are taught to find all the edge cases and dig deep into requirements and find all of the potential problems before we build anything. And we do that in order to build robust solutions. But in the learning context, that can be limiting to the students. It's much better to, you just don't want to be telling them, oh, there's already one of those, or that's already, that's a dumb idea because it's not going to make any money or whatever. Like, you just want to be like, yeah, and what about, have you thought about this? And you can keep adding to help them refine their idea rather than saying, no, that's a bad idea or whatever. Because, that's not helpful. So one of the things that to mention is that obviously Apple has this Swift Student Challenge that happens every year as part of the Worldwide Developer Conference, where Apple invites students to submit their applications, not actually Xcode applications, but Swift Playground applications, which I learned you can actually make in Xcode recently, but I thought it was just out of Playgrounds, but you can do it in Xcode. But anyway, they have the Swift Student Challenge, and submissions happen in, I think submissions have happened already. I think they have to happen in February, but it's the idea that students submit, and then at the next dub, which will be in a couple of months, the students who have succeeded in impressing Apple sufficiently with their submissions get 50 of them. I think there's 500 winners overall, but globally, but they only take the top 50 and take them to Cupertino, and they get to enjoy 3 days of exciting events and meeting engineers and their peers from all around the world at Apple. And obviously, things like She Hacks Swift are a good entry point into the Swift Student Challenge, because at least for groups who do work, unfortunately can't do group work with Swift Student Challenge, but you can do individual submissions. But at least with having built something, they know they're more equipped to be able to do the Swift Student Challenge. And coincidentally, feedback we got was that since we started doing the She Hacks Swift, we've gotten a lot more submissions from students in Australia, particularly more diverse students, like women and gender diverse individuals, whereas previously it was, if we were getting any submissions, it was all dudes. Yeah, so I recommend, I'm a bit biased here, but I recommend anyone who's an experienced engineer to get involved in this sort of thing. You don't have to just do Swift Student Challenge or the She Hacks Swift event, but if you do and you are interested in participating when we do the next ones, please let us know. And of course, obviously, if you're a parent and you have nerdy children, particularly girls, please enroll them in She Hacks Swift. The more the merrier. And yeah, that's it. I think I'm going to hand over to my lovely wife and take my baby. His birthday. It's her birthday today. Wow, her 2-month birthday. Yeah, take it.
Awesome.
The important question, iOS or Android?
All right, well, we've got the Sydney team listening, so we'll keep hopping through it. So what we've done, so last week in Melbourne at CocoaHeads, we shared the story about She Hacks Swift in Melbourne as well. And given that it happened in Sydney, we're live streaming to the Sydney people. And there's a really important reason that we do that. Hopefully next year we'll be able to bring it to Brisbane. What's important to know is that Queensland is one of the few school curriculums that actually teaches Swift. Most of the other states don't. And I've looked at all of the curriculums across the different states, and it's actually really heartwarming to see how well we actually do it up here. No offence, Sydney, but you know, you're always welcome to come visit and have a look. But there's some really important reasons that we do this stuff. So 2 years ago, the federal government kicked off a diversity in STEM review, and they said, so why are there not, you know, why do we not have gender equality in STEM in Australia? And so what we did was we spoke to our community, and we did a survey at Girl Geek Academy. So what are some of the things that you're facing, and what are the experiences that you're having? And so we submitted that policy document to the federal government, who largely ignored it. Yay. So that's why I keep banging the drum and going on about the things that we can do and what are the things that we can achieve. Because if we waited for the government to do those things, it's probably going to take a while. And so what we talk about is that we need to fix the system, not the girls. Like, it's not that girls aren't interested. I learnt to code when I was 5 years old on a micro-B computer, which is an Australian computer. But I got pushed out in year 10. And that was because I, built a pink website. Apparently it was meant to be grey, and I got in trouble. And I was like, well, okay, maybe this isn't for me, was the messaging that I was getting. I was the last woman standing after being the first girl in my high school to enter computer programming competitions. But you just feel like you're really not meant to be there anymore. So We need to fix some of the things that are happening to girls and not fix the girls themselves. So She Hacks Swift is really about fixing the role modelling. Like, how are we actually going out there and saying, hey, this is for you, come play with us, come make friends, this is a welcome space for you to be in. And that's really targeting that number 3 there. So we could be better ambassadors of our career and our industry to be able to help bring women in and keep them there once they get there. We need to fix a lot of other things, but I'm not going to go through that, otherwise that'd be a very depressing talk. But what it is worth knowing is that it's not that women suddenly don't want to be in tech, or that they're suddenly pushed out, or there's just some particular thing. It's just the micro cuts that happen along the way over many, many years. As I said, for me, it took from year 5 to year 10. And at year 10, I went, you know, I'm just going to do legal studies. Like, there's just a heck of a lot less, you know, BS in that for me. I found my way back to tech, but I still didn't find it in the way that I could have if that was nurtured from the very start. And so what we talk about at Girl Geek Academy, so we often think about it as being a pipeline problem. Oh, the girls, you know, and women get pushed out, they get pushed out. Cool, that's not very helpful, but like, what do we actually need to do to wrap around them and say, no, no, you're welcome here at each point in the pipeline? So there's different things that we can do to take action, which was one of the themes for International Women's Day, is taking action on these issues. So yeah, it's the little things that really help women get included, and I'm going to share what some of those things are today, because we want to talk about solving these problems rather than just going, oh, stats, stats, stats. And we know what works. We just need to do more of it. So getting women to actually say, hey, this is what I want. This would make it better for me. Asking women to lead these solutions, not in a way that puts more work on them, but just in a way that they're involved in that consultation and that process. Budgets. So I don't know how many of you work for big corporates, but show me the line item that says we actually fund the programs that help these things happen. Because what happens is we often ask women to volunteer. Hey women, we have a women problem. Can you women please volunteer to fix the women problem? Which takes them away from the code, takes them away from the tools. And to be quite frank, they have to learn how to be event managers, which for those of you who are running these events, it's a completely different skill set to the engineering degrees that they have. And then targets work. So if you aim at nothing, you'll hit the mark. So being able to actually quantify and say, well, how many could we do? Like, what changes could we make? And actually setting targets bloody works. But there's a couple of other things that happen at those different stages. So this is the tiniest writing in the world because there's a lot of things and I didn't want to have to just share them all with you. But basically to say that at primary school, there's some things that we can do specifically for primary school girls. And that looks different to what we would do at high school. And that looks different to what we do at university, and that looks different to what we do as people in industry. Some of those contribute. So for example, as an industry person, you could volunteer at high school programs, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. In the same way that people get pushed out by being nudged, we nudge them back in with a heck of a lot of different programs that we try to wrap around. But one of the biggest things that I wanted to share with you is this idea of being a bystander. We know what happens is it's not the people who are aggressively doing harm and saying, you know, I'm bullying you out. It's the fact that when something happens that's a bit not quite right, the rest of the room doesn't say anything. They don't call it out because it takes a bit to be brave to do that. And so, you know, one of my friends talks about, we don't need safe spaces, we need brave spaces where people are like, nah, that's not okay, even if it's not happening to you. So I would just empower anyone if you say, well, what, you know, okay, there's this problem. I didn't cause the problem. I'm not doing anything. But the one thing you can do is say, if something's a little bit shit, call it out. And yeah, that makes all the difference. Even just to the person to hear it and go, oh, that person had my back, thank God. And so what we really need to do, just to reiterate, is that we want to fix the system, not the girls, and to take that message with us through everything that we do in terms of making an impact on the change that can be made. Because what we want to know is, what would the internet look like if there were more women building it? How would our apps look different? What types of markets would we service that look different? What problems would be solved that would, you know, actually be addressed? Only 3% of the, well, On a good year, 3% of the world's venture capital goes to women-led startups. Sometimes it is a heck of a lot less, and it is very sad and depressing. But you know, if 97% of the big money in tech goes to funding ideas that men have had to change the world, well, then the world isn't going to change for women, or women don't get to say, here's how we make it better for everybody. And so the next speaker that you'll hear from tonight is talking about her journey. And what I really want you to hold in your mind as you're listening to her talk is, if I met this person along the way at different points in their journey, what could I have done to help that person? What are some of the things that you can't read on my slide, but it is there? What are some of the actions, the little actions you can take to include people in a tiny way? Because it takes a tiny bit of effort, but if we all do it, then that's how we'll make sure that there are more women building the internet. Thank you. We might have time for like 2 minutes of questions and answers if anyone has any, because I know we've got Wei in Sydney. Did anyone in Brisbane have any questions for myself or Oliver? Great. Oh, do we have one? No. Ta. Great. Then I have a question for you. That was my cheeky methodology, which is if you are free, one of the things that a lot of people have available to them that they don't utilise is corporate volunteer leave. So if your corporate says you can go and volunteer, we've deliberately designed this as a 3-day program because that's about how much volunteer leave our organisations offer. So if you are interested, we time it, we're hoping to do it again in the school holidays in January next year. And if you need support to get there or anything like that, then please let us know, because your expertise is really helpful, but also we offer training. Oliver pretty much just trained you on how to be a mentor and how to work with young high school girls. One of the things that I find fascinating is a lot of people are scared to volunteer because they think that teenage girls are the scariest thing on earth, somewhat like that girl in The Ring. So please don't be afraid. We would really encourage you. I'd encourage you to take a photo of this slide and keep it in your notes, because we would love to see you as a volunteer, and hopefully we can run it in Brisbane as well next year. Great. And I'll hand that over now to the Sydney team. We'll do the switcheroo. Thanks, Adam.
Awesome, thank you. Sweet. Have we got a link to that stream on here at all? Is this on your computer?
It might have
or?
been closed with the other tab
Oh,
that
no,
was
we've got it
closed.
here.
Oh, there it is. Cool.
Awesome. Sweet, and then hopefully we can get some audio. Yeah, they're streaming us. And now we're streaming them. We've got Streamception going on.
Is this coming all right? Is louder enough? Or want me to speak louder? Louder? Okay. Ladies, do you want to sit in front of here? Come and join us. Oh, what's happening? Come on. Oh, yes, great. My turn now. Is it on? Oh, good. Hello, everyone. My name is Huang. I'm the principal engineer in ABC. I'm not sure, have you heard of ABC? How many people are we grown up watching Bananas in Pajamas?
It's after my time.
No, it's after your time, okay. Anyone have heard of Triple J or voted for Hottest 100? Yes, that's great. Or are you watching iView? That's great, yeah. So ABC is a place, create content, telling stories, telling great stories. Today, I'm going to be telling a little bit story about the engineering side. And so what do you expect to see today is, I'm going to first tell of a little bit more myself, my past experience being an engineer, my versions of the story. I'm sorry you will hear a lot of myself, I'm sorry for that. And from that, I'd like to share a little bit of my opinion. For example, we don't have to be sitting in the corner office, or we don't have to want the corner office. There's a lot of treasures on the way we can collect. We don't have to be the boss to feel successful in our career. And also I want to share opinion about how powerful the storytelling skill is that can amplify your engineering impact to your business. So I'm going to tell a little bit story about how I turned a crisis in my career to be an opportunity that really a game changer, which helped our 30 mobile developers in ABC. And in the end, because it's International Women's Month, I'd like to share the frameworks that I'm using and to help you raise your profile without feeling awkward, without cringe. Bear with me. A little bit myself, who am I? So I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I run every other day because I value health a lot in my life. And I'm a sci-fi writer. I had my first book published 10 years ago, and my second one is coming out later this month, maybe next month. It depends on the print, how quick they can print. And from last year, I'm obsessed with oil painting, so I'm not sure whether you can see this. These are the oil paintings I was doing since last year. And also, during pandemic, I find it's really boring because we're locked in home. We're not able to go out. So I decided to study. So I had my full-time job and full-time study. I get my master degree of financial technology. So if you're interested talking about decentralized finance, want to know a little bit about how you build borrowing and lending on top of blockchain, I'm happy to share my 2 cents. So so I was born in China, but I've been living in Australia more than 10 years. Every time I travel back to China, I feel like everything changed, and then started to make notes to say, okay, cash is useless. Mobile, Android map, Google Map doesn't work. TikTok, cannot use. And I started writing all the notes. Now I'm sharing it all out to help people who wants to travel in China, navigate in China. So it's all free, just my personal notes. Feel free to check it out. Okay, enough about my personal story. I'd like to introduce a little myself on the professional side. My version of story being an engineer. So I'm not young anymore. I've been in this industry for 20 years. So my career can be split into before mobile, during mobile, and after mobile. So I'm not do coding in mobile anymore, but I still love mobile engineering. Before doing mobile engineering, I was many years ago, I was in a North American company called Active Network. If you run marathon or actively join sports, you might heard of this company. It's been running there for 40 years in North America, and very popular in Canada and US. So But in the year of 2011, I got my first smartphone, which is Android phone. And I built an Android game on that phone. And that game getting really popular. I got 8 million of users. I feel like that's a signal, that's a sign, said to me, you need to be a mobile engineer. So I quit my job, made myself become an Android engineer. After 1 year building all the apps, I signed a contract, which is an NDA, not disclosure agreement, with Sony. And I went into a dark room. What I mean by dark room is we're not allowed to take anything personal belongings to the room. All the phones or the computer with camera has to lock it out from the room because we were making the cutting edge phone. The project code is called Leo. That's the most competitive phone or most beautiful phone in the world during that time. What I was doing is the top secrets in the mobile industry at that time. So I was so proud of, and I found that experience is really unique to my career. And so the NDA lasted for 3 years, so I'm allowed to talk about it now, but I specifically dropped the company's name over there just intentionally. And what we're building for that phone was we upgrade the operation system from Android Lollipop, from Android KitKat to Android Lollipop. So we call it the cookie upgrade. And when we were working on that, all the phones were actually prototype. It's not released yet in the market for sure. So all the phones are carefully wrapped with the black plastic, and we're not allowed to take it off. It's high secret. So I never get a chance to see what's behind at the back side of the phone, and I saw it only when it's officially released. So after that secret projects, I planned to do mobile. So I was leading a team including iOS and Android engineers all together, and also we get a chance to put our hands dirty on the open source Firefox OS. I'm not sure whether you heard of it. It disappeared quickly after several years. It's an open source phone made by Firefox. And the kernel is still Android, in Linux kernel, but on top of it, it's called the web-based engine. So all the apps running on it are built in HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and all that. It was a lovely phone, but just very slow. Performance is not great, so yeah. And after that, I did a lot of people management, and then become an engineering manager and leading a big team, building all the apps for ABC, like the kids app and the iView, the news, and all the apps you can think of, all the brands you can think of. And I started to co-chair with my awesome colleague Nisha, to build a women engineering community in ABC. So we have total around 50 women engineers in ABC across all Australias. Every year, we invited all of us coming to Sydney and have the in-person meetup, sharing our knowledge, sharing our talks, building our connections, and it's growing really, really big. We have some plan to take it wider, maybe building some connections outside of ABC, and we'll see. I'll let you know what happens. If the group growing bigger, that would be great. So when I was being an engineering manager at ABC, I focused a lot of I took a lot of focus on the developer experience, really did a lot of things to improve that a little bit. I have some stories to share in the next slides. But after that, I decided to move on. It's not because I did not like mobile anymore, it's because I have been really doing a lot of mobile in the past 14 years. You can see that. I think it's time to move on. So now, currently, I'm a principal engineer in ABC, dealing with a lot of distributed systems, doing Kafka, message bus, things like that. And my day-to-day work is talking to a lot of content makers to understand their daily challenges and really understand the media industry challenges. That's currently my daily work now. What's next, I don't know yet, but I can see that AI is making a lot of changes to our industry, how we build code, how we write code, how we ship products. So I'm doing a little bit research and experimentation with it. So I'll come back maybe in 1 year time, report back what I found interesting. All right, so the first opinion, so from the background that I shared about myself, probably you have seen that I kind of jumping around a little bit, being an engineer, being a manager, do some people management work, and then dive into the technical details. So because I really don't like the idea that put limitation myself, because I really believe life is a journey, so as Korea, I don't believe there's a ladder to climb. I don't believe being a president or be a boss of something is really something I would be proud of. No offense, but yeah, I just make decision by what I value, what I believe at that moment. And I really want to say is I really allow myself to change because I believe have different experience after having a lot of experiment. My interests change. I need to allow myself to change as well. I need to allow myself to adapt to different roles, to solve different problems. Sometimes try to take the boring work. It might look boring, but when you make it your own version, it might be different. So I'm going to use an example, what I mean by that. So if you look at that picture, I'm not sure whether it's big enough. There are 4 Mac mini machines that sits at ABC Automotive Office, level 3. It's been there many, many years, 8 years at least. So what its job is, all of our mobile iOS and Android apps are building on top of these 4 Mac mini machines. And it's getting really, really slow. Every time we make some code changes to our code base, we have to wait 1 hour to get our code into the queue to be built. And because the machine is really old, it takes about 1 hour to compile, to test, and then allow us to merge the code to the code base. It's a nightmare for all of our engineers. Imagine when you do some code changes and you are not going to see it immediately, you will see it tomorrow. If anything breaks, you will need to wait another 2 hours. I think that's the best, or that's the worst developer experience in my life. It's not even OS, even the Sony OS takes 3 hours to build. This mobile apps, come on, we need to change this. But imagine I was the engineering manager over there. If I take this problem to my head, what they will say to me, I can almost imagine they will say, our Australians can wait 2 hours to get your app. They want our content, not the updates to your app. They can wait because ABC is a public funded company. Every penny we spent, we were very careful. We need to have a strong reason to have this budget to spend. So I didn't take that to my boss because I don't believe that's powerful enough until one day a crisis happened. It's the year 2023. Most of the city, not most, like a lot of cities in Australia was in flood. Our journalists are in the front line reporting emergencies and sending back the information, sent a lot of push notifications, but suddenly we got a blackout in Automotive office. Luckily, we didn't have to ship anything quickly at that day, and our power recovered rapidly, so everything back to normal. But those 4 Mac mini machines, you know how it works, right? You need someone to physically push the button to turn it on. And we don't have anyone in the office because we were all working from home. Until today, we're still working from home, ABC, the digital product engineers. So I was reading my ops engineer. I was like, our Mac mini machine was dead and we need someone to turn it on. And they were like, I'm riding my bike to the office to turn it on and I'll be there in 1 hour. I was like, okay. So actually nobody noticed, not my head or boss of ABC, none of our audience noticed this incident. But I decided to tell the story to my boss to make the good impact of this, what happened, of the story, to help us with something. So instead of telling the fact, what happened, because as engineers, we often tell the fact of a story, but really what really powerful is the impact of the story or impact of a thing. So I decided just to say one thing to my boss. Hey, we have a single point of failure. We have local 4 Mac Mini machines running in our office. If that machine doesn't work, the entire business stopped. That's the single point of failure of my team. Now I present this problem to you. Please help us solve this problem. And my boss didn't say anything. He was like, what's the solution? In my inner me, I was like, yes. Once he started to ask the solution, which means he acknowledged it's a crisis, it's a problem to solve. So I didn't need to do anything about, oh, we take 2 hours to build. We didn't need to say that. So I was preparing the solution so well. Like either we go with, okay, we buy more Mac Minis distributed in Melbourne, in Brisbane, in Perth. So any city in floods, we have some disaster recovery. And that's option 1. Option 2, we have cloud solutions. If entire Australians in floods, I'm sorry to say that, but we still can build our apps in UK, in US, distribute to all Australians. So my boss proved, okay, that's the little thing, a little story that I told, changed the way we build apps entirely. Now I have a happy team, happy developers, business continuity plan, well done, and a happy business. So that's the little story that I want to share to show how important a storytelling skill is. Now, being a principal engineer, I didn't expect that. I have to tell more stories. ABC is a place, it's been running for 90 years. I don't think anyone will be surprised to see this spaghetti diagram in a 90 years old organization, because we have news, we have iView, we have Listen, we have a lot of content makers, and we have cameramen running in the field. We have a lot of content creators. It's not surprise we have so many different CMS systems, so many different ways of editing a video or live stream. And we have our data landing in a lot of other places. So as the new build machine learning services and search services, it's a spaghetti bowl. And our head of architects, his name is Matthew Granger, I work with him day to day, identified it's probably the first emergent problem to solve in ABC, and we need to make our content maker or make the other side of the business, not the engineers, understand how important a clean architecture can solve for their business bottleneck. Especially when media industry is changing so fast, how people consume the content is just fundamentally changed. Is anyone still watching TV, like the old broadcast TV? No one, right? We are all on YouTube or iView. We're watching something different. We're using TikTok. And we are saying that we need to build the liquidity of the content. What does it mean is one story, we're telling it in different ways. A lot of people like podcast, but now more people like video podcast. How we make one version of content, but it has so many different formats to support. If we look at this spaghetti diagram, how long it would take to create different formats for just only one content. I cannot imagine. I don't want to count. But with this content exchange, event bus, and distribute system that can help distribute the message, only have one single source of truth to distribute their content. I believe all the engineers over here, we understand how important a clean architect like this can impact the business, but my job is to take this story, explain it, why it's important to our content makers to help them make decision. So I'll report back how it goes. So I'm still doing that. Right, I have been telling a lot of enough stories. I hope you can resonate with me somehow. And the last topic is for the women engineers in the room or anyone who feel awkward when you raise your profile. I know that because I was one of you, I feel really awkward. I don't want to show off. I don't want to brag about myself. I don't want to talk about my achievements. But one day I changed because I think the motivation behind is more important than the thing itself. For example, the reason I'm standing here today is I want to make new friends, make new connections, and I want to build new opportunities for myself as well. So I said that's the problem I solved in the past. Then you know me, and when you see the problem in the future, you can connect that with me. I hope so. So I think the motivation is more important than talking, than bragging or show off yourself. And sometimes I feel like if I'm talking here, say something silly, you might judge me or roast me in public. But later on I realized, actually, you won't remember me tomorrow. Let's be honest, like you won't even remember my name, my face tomorrow or in 1 week later. So it's okay. Even I make mistakes, people forget about it. The one who cannot forget about it is yourself, but you can do it. Sometimes we feel we build connection only when we offer help. Oh, I can help you with this, so we can build the close connection. But actually, quite the opposite. We ask for help, that can build connection as well. Because when you ask for help, you are explaining your thinking, your chain of thoughts, the reason behind that. People can build connection with that also. So try it out. And then imposter syndrome. A lot of us have that, especially the high performers. I don't believe if you say, oh, I never had that. But my secret to that is fake it until make it. I'm not 100% confident when I was standing here. I'm just faking at the moment. Yeah, you can feel that. Another one is a lot of people don't like conflict because it feels like when we speak, when I address our opinions, it feels like I'm building myself a target. People can attack me with different opinions. But my mental model is I take conflict as a gift, because when you think about the goal, you want to try to solve something, different opinions is gold. You want different opinions because that can make sure you can have enough information to make the right decision for the things you want to achieve. So yeah, conflict is a gift. Take it and think about it. It might help you better to make decision. After all of this, you might think, oh, still feel so weird. I'm just talking about myself. But I would say, focus on the goal more than the feeling. The feeling, let's acknowledge it. The feeling it's valuable. It's feeling itself. But when we move to the goal, it will be taking to the better, help you to make a better decision, taking to a better place. So this is my little secrets, my frameworks that help me working here and speak on the stage. I hope that can help you too. My final thing, I'd like to send an invitation. I thought I'm coming here going to see a lot of women engineers in this room, but yeah, seems like only 6 of us. I sent the invitation to the male engineers in the room, actually. I'd like to invite you to support us. So when you see a woman engineer in your team, and sometimes they say something, but they get passed over, or I'd like to invite you to support them, to support her, to say, hey, Sarah, what you just said about something was very interesting. Can you explain that again to us? Or just simply say, Sarah, you worked so close to this thing, and what's your take on this? Just invite her to the talk. Or if your manager asks who leading this, who want to lead, just say her name, give her an opportunity. That's all I want to share today, and thank you.
One, you mentioned that your women engineering team is about 50, I believe,
Yes.
and that you hope to expand that. What sort of scale is the actual number of women engineers or technical within ABC? Is it about the 25% that the industry
That's a great question. That's a great question. So in total, we have 160 engineers in the team. So 50 is not a
bad number.
not bad number. That's because we tried a lot. We did build a lot of things. We're trying to make sure women feel safe to talk. And ABC was running a lot of D&I programs. So we tried many years bring up the number from, I believe it was 30 to 50. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again, Wei.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing your story. All right, and that's all we have for the formalities tonight. Feel free to stick around and have a chat if you like.
you.